The year is 2015, folks. That's when the game we're about to talk about released. Probably the best game that year, and in fact, one of the best games of all time.
Let me guess, Ray. Bloodborne?
Nope, the other best game.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 5.
Geez, the one literally everybody liked, Brick.
Rocket League. Rainbow Six Siege. I don't know, you gotta help me out here.
Dude, the single player game when we decided to start the video with.
What? Undertale? Her Story? Oh, I got it. Fallout 76.
Okay, fine. I'm just gonna spell it out. It's made by a Polish game development company.
Oh, why didn't you say that straight away? Dying Light.
Brick?
You're not retarded. You're just slow. Okay?
So folks, I'm Raymando, this is Game Anatomy, and let's start by talking about one of the best games of 2015.
Are your parents home?
Aye, but they're busy. Mum's off to par with a frying pan, 'cause he, bothered this lady.
Fucked.
No, seriously, this is the most subliminally homoerotic a game has made me feel, an outlet twister at Kevin Spacey's house. Heck, it even received a perfect rating from clueless gamers like Conan O'Brien, IGN, or Machinima.
I see a butt coming.
But in 2016, the author of the original novels, Andrzej Sapkowski, comes up and says that the success of the Witcher games ultimately harmed his books. He further added that game writers write game-related stuff exclusively for money, and surely they write in a sloppy manner half-heartedly. In his mind, one can pass on them.
Guess you'd know, since your mom's a bitch.
So, Ray, you're basically gonna make a whole video over something one old dude said.
I knew you'd say that, Prick, but he's not the only guy who thinks that. Apart from so many articles and videos I literally just showed you, even John Carmack, the creator of Quake and Doom, has said that story in a game is like story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important.
Well, I completely disagree right off the bat. I feel that the story is actually one of the most important bits of a porn movie.
Let's just stick to games for now. So, what I want you to do is close your eyes, really. Imagine any game you've played that had a completely linear story, picture the characters, the setting of that specific game in your mind. And think that would it have been better told if it was just a movie or a TV series? Or does that being a game add something to the storytelling that wouldn't have been possible as a piece of cinema? If something did come to your mind, I want you to comment about it. And before I talk about video games and if they're ruining the art of storytelling, I want to compare them with a more recently developed form of storytelling: cinema. More like the beginning years of cinema. A lot of it just seems like theater. I mean, we still hadn't figured out how to use this completely new medium, so we were applying already working standards of an existing medium into it. Sound familiar? And just like exploring the difference between movies and plays has grown cinema in the long run, I want to discuss the difference between storytelling of video games and movies. And starting off with interactivity, which is definitely the most glaring difference between the two. And about that, I have a story to share. Just a couple days back, I was doing one of my reruns of The Witcher 3, and this happened. Yep, I died fighting some harpies, so no big deal, but the game glitched. Instead of returning me to the menu screen like it was supposed to, the game continued its state of affairs. It kind of forgot this whole world is designed for me, and now I was in a reality where Geralt didn't exist anymore. I was almost about to restart the game and it stuck me. Heck, let's see what happens. Probably the world is gonna stop functioning because I'm dead right here. But then those pesky little harpies started to trouble my good old horse Roach, and the horse began retaliating with her powers to stun them. And I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty impressive to see these game elements react to each other as if they were real. They weren't behaving like computer programs that switch off as soon as they're not needed. They behaved like real creatures. There was no damage exchanged either side, not that I could notice. So of course, I was baffled enough though and didn't expect any more of that to happen. So I closed the game. Or did I? After I let the game run for some time as I came back from a long walk, expecting nothing but the same, Roach had already killed 2 harpies. So what is just supposed to be a source of transportation within the game has a whole behavior and agency of its own, even after the player literally dies beside it? I'm not gonna lie, that blew my fucking mind away. When games are designed like that, it provides the background for weird little player-created stories like this. And it's not just about that. Just look at how no other medium of storytelling allows you to change the story based upon your decisions.
Really, Ray? Let's just act like Goosebumps Choose Your Own Scare series didn't even happen.
Come on, prick, let's be real. You basically could flip back to the previous page and get the best results.
Yup, that totally doesn't happen in games.
Fuck you, my point was that you cannot change the ending of a TV series in your second run. You cannot roam around to explore the world created in a movie if you want to. You cannot have the first-hand experience of feeling like the badass hero shown in a comic book. And that is something that video games should totally milk. And that brings us back to the Witcher 3 example, right? How they designed this living, breathing world. You can interact with it, see the changes that you make, but you not being there doesn't stop them from following their natural tendencies. So we talked about you interacting with the game elements or the game elements interacting with each other, but what about the game or its story reacting to you? And no, I'm not just talking about the menu-y choose A, B or C route, but a more organic way. Like how soldiers in Metal Gear Solid 5 will start wearing night vision goggles more often if you attack only at nights, or will start wearing helmets more often if you take too many headshots. I mean, this really is a different kind of storytelling that we usually see through cutscenes, and fuses so perfectly with the gameplay, right? And I feel every game has the opportunity to experiment things like this within their technical bounds. And speaking of cutscenes, let's get back to the narrative-driven games, okay? It is quite noticeable that they pick up features like cinematography from movies, just like movies were picking up things from its previous mediums.
But Ray, why do I give an ant's ass about the story in a game? If I only wanted a good linear story, I'd go binge a TV series or something, rather than spending $60 on it. It's a video game. I want gameplay.
See, you got a point there, prick, and the answer to that lies in the word that we've been using so far. Video game. There's a kind of stigma attached to this term as a whole. When we hear the word video game, we expect there to be missions and boss fights, puzzles, basically gameplay. But gameplay is the enemy of pacing. Like how the creators of Heavy Rain called it an interactive drama, but we still call it a game anyway.
Oh come on, spare me the pretentious shit, Ray. What's the point?
The point is that in any other medium of storytelling, the narrator has complete control over what the viewer sees and when the viewer sees it. The interpretation is up to you, but if it's my story, I have the power to tell you how I want it. And that kind of storytelling is not possible to do in games because they require you to beat a level before moving ahead in the story. So the story is dependent upon the player, this player, who's busy lollygagging around in the open world.
No lollygagging.
Now, take something like Batman Arkham Asylum for example. The events of that game happened within one night, and it took me what, like 15 hours or something to finish on the hardest difficulty?
You really had to grab in for that hardest difficulty bit, didn't you?
What I mean is that it really felt like I was going through the events in real time or something. Since there were no side missions, it allowed me to focus on the sole narrative. But on the other hand, pick up something like The Witcher 3, where I truly enjoyed doing the side quests and Witcher contracts. Maybe more so than the main story. But I couldn't help but notice this fake sense of impending doom that's added to basically raise the stakes.
Silence. My daughter Cirilla, she's returned. And she's in danger. The Wild Hunt pursues her.
See, it's not like I don't enjoy such games, but there's always some kind of conflict between the player's agency and the protagonist's urgency.
But Ray, you can't ignore the fact that all of these games are just trying hard to be movies. I mean, look at Dark Souls. It has a deep hidden lore, but it's not shoving it down my throat like the pizza.
Okay, I got it, but that's the thing, right? Imagine if every game started using the same storytelling techniques as Dark Souls. That would stagnate it even worse than how every open world game right now wants to impress its big brothers down in Ubisoft. What I think Dark Souls nails is combine that lore well into the level design, music, and a very satisfying gameplay loop. Whenever we playing any game, the feeling that we subconsciously seek is accomplishment. Just like the creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto puts it.
やっぱりね、達成感だと思うんですね。で、達成感にはいろんなことがあると思うんですけど、まあ一つはクリアするっていうボスを倒すとかゴールに行くという達成感もあるんですけども。
Gameplay is the most important part of a game, in my opinion, even if it's story focused. I mean, how many games can you name that had terrible gameplay, yet you enjoyed them a lot? Possibly not many? A solid narrative is what makes a good game into a great game. Pay attention that I use the word narrative here because it can literally be done in so many ways it's not even funny. Her story takes a rich story, splits it into pieces, and gives you access to them straight away through a search bar. You search different terms, piece the story together. You can finish the game within the first 5 minutes, or you could take hours jotting down notes like a real detective and make connections between the different events. I know I did. That is something that can only be achieved through a game. That mix of the drive to accomplish and the curiosity of unraveling a story. There really is no one perfect way to tell stories in a video game. I mean, look at Dwarf Fortress, for example, where even the history of the world is generated randomly, so no two players experience the same thing. Every NPC is an actual character who you can look up the history of. They have their own dreams and motivations which will affect the story. The game keeps track of events in every character's life, their literary, poetic, and musical movements within the game world. There's so much to talk about this game alone that it could take a whole video of its own.
Yeah, Ray, catch a breath. No wonder it's still in development since 2004.
Brick, gaming as a medium itself is still in development.
I did set myself up for that one, didn't I?
Well, you did set me up for the bottom line, which is that games are a really new medium, especially of storytelling. And we're seeing both kinds of games. Games that are trying to follow whatever worked before, and games that are attempting to do things in a new way. So yes, video games might be destroying the traditional art of storytelling, but they're defining their own. There is no right way to tell a story through a video game, and that's why it's up to us to buy the kind of games we want more of, since money really is the best feedback. But at the end of the day, it would always be up to the creators of how they want to tell their story, if any at all.